At U46, the expectation is that everyone stay engaged in a safe academic setting. Here's a brief overview of the Student Code of Conduct. But first, a quick disclaimer. The rules that are published in this book are subject to change based on compliance with federal, state, or local regulations. Also, a behavior found disruptive that is not posted in this book and is deemed so according to board policy will be disciplined. There are two ways for our staff, students, parents, or guardians to report a concern on the U46 website. First, within the parents and students section, or second, through the Let's Talk tool. The focus of the Code of Conduct is on behavior interventions and disciplinary consequences aimed at teaching positive behaviors and resolving conflict. We encourage our school community members to take responsibility for their behavior and restore relationships while maintaining a safe and productive learning environment. We apply policies and practices in a fair and equitable manner. The Student Code of Conduct outlines the rights and responsibilities for students, parents, school personnel, and the community. Each section provides specific rights and responsibilities for each group. The Student Code of Conduct applies to all students at all times, while at school, during a school-sponsored event, or at after-school activities that impacts the safe school environment of students or staff. This includes any act that occurs off school property that substantially disrupts the educational setting, which includes but are not limited to social media comments, the use of school-issued Chromebooks, or any digital media. Beware that U46 does not share student information. Use zero-tolerance policies in relation to suspensions or expulsions. It does not give suspensions to K through second grade for 3 or more consecutive days or 10 cumulative days without district permission. U46 does not suggest to students that they drop out nor request monetary consequences, use physical restraint nor seclusion punishments, nor withhold lunch as a punishment. Our behavior interventions are based on multi-tiered system of support. MTSS is to integrate a 3-tiered model of support for addressing needs of students through research-based system-wide practices. The goal is to ensure the students receive rich experiences every year in every setting with every teacher. The MTSS model of support addressing the needs of all students through a coherent continuum of research-based, system-wide practices supporting teaching and learning, academic, social, emotional, and behavioral. It is a systematic and prevention-based framework of team-driven data-based problem solving for improving the outcomes of every student. When a behavior incident occurs, there are many factors that are taken into consideration. Behavior referrals or disciplinary referrals all abide by due process rights of students. District U46 considers the following factors in analyzing the root causes of an incident and determining which supports could address these factors without removing the student from school or administering disciplinary consequences. For referrals, staff members must investigate the incident, meet the students involved, allow for disciplinary alternatives as a consequence, and give notice to both students and parent or guardians of the incident and consequences. Out-of-school suspensions of 3 days or less may be used if the student's presence poses a threat to safety of the school or to disrupt the learning environment. OSS, that is more than 3 days, may only be used if all behavioral interventions have been used. All suspensions will be immediately reported to legal guardians or parents, and no student will be sent home unless parents have been contacted. School administrators must use an informed judgment as to whether the student's actions violate the Student Code of Conduct. The interventions should be used progressively to help a student become more successful. This section covers of these types and depicts the levels of intervention that are appropriate for behavior and who that behavior is managed by. Level 1 is managed by teachers because the event is not serious enough to warrant administrative management. Level 2 through 4 are managed by administrators. Each student and situation is different, and a combination of multiple interventions may be used. The next section identifies different interventions for each level described in the previous pages. In order to maintain order and security in the schools, school authorities are authorized to conduct reasonable searches of school property and equipment, as well as of students and their personal effects. School authorities may inspect and search school property and equipment owned or controlled by the school, such as lockers, desks, and parking lots, as well as personal effects left there by a student without notice to or the consent of the student. Students have no reasonable expectation of privacy in these places or areas or in their personal effects left there. While respecting students' individual rights to privacy, administrative searches can be done as long as they are minimally intrusive and fair. Public and student privacy should be taken into consideration to prevent students from seeing others' possessions. If evidence is found that violating the law or district policies, evidence may be seized. Restraint is not to be used as a form of punishment. It may only be used to preserve the safety of students and others. Staff must be trained before using physical restraint. Parents must be notified within 24 hours of the incident. If your student believes that they are being bullied, report it to a school official or principal at your school first. You can report the incident anonymously or providing your name and contact information by using the link to the U46 bullying reporting form. Sexual harassment is strictly prohibited. It involves any person who makes sexual advances, requests sexual favors, and engages in other verbal or physical contact of sexual nature. Any employee receiving a harassment complaint from a student is required to report to the chief legal officer. The U46 grievance procedure, in compliance with both state and federal education regulations, this section outlines the process of filing a complaint or question. It outlines that within 60 days after receiving the grievance, the U46 coordinator will send a written response to the individuals filing a grievance. The glossary at the end of the document is a helpful resource for understanding what the school's terminology is comprised of. Search for different acronyms and what they stand for, behavioral actions, consequences, interventions, and supports that are referenced throughout the guide.